the debate is settled, guys. The debate between, if there was one, and frankly, I think it's I question your football knowledge if you felt it was a debate. Justin Herbert is better than Tua. Tua has been really bad the past two games. And honestly, I was almost defending him in the last game against the Niners because their defense is the best in football. Kyle Shanahan is the head coach, so he can give D'Amico Ryans some tips about, hey, like I've worked with Mike McDaniel my entire career. These are the tendencies, these are the things that he likes to do, etc. So it just seemed like they had their number that day. And also, Tua just seemed off in that game, and his throws were not accurate. And I just felt, okay, maybe he's a little jumpy, he's a little banged up. And he has been dealing with injuries, but that's not what it felt like last night. It felt like he was just completely outclassed. And I know that the Chargers played more man to man than the Dolphins were probably used to. They had the personnel actually to match up with that in a way that I was surprised that they were able to do so. But at halftime, Tua had completed just 3 passes. I mean, Justin Herbert is on the other side, and he's completing passes into windows that are this tiny.
That one he had, on the left sideline to Keenan Allen, where Allen pointed at him.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I don't even know how he fit it into his hands. Like it almost defied physics. But the weird thing about Tua's game yesterday is that he obviously, his big calling card is his accuracy, and he had a few.
I have a perspective on that as
wow.
well.
I think I know that perspective. But,
pretty easy to be accurate when your receivers are wide open.
But I think with the way that the Chargers game plan, the way Brandon Staley schemed up the defense for this specific matchup, was to basically blanket the primary options and make the challenge be to go out of structure, go to your secondary reads, and make plays that aren't the ones that you are accustomed to making, or you were accustomed to immediately being open. And he struggled with that. There were a few throws he had, a few reps he had that were clean pockets, there were open guys, and he missed the throws. He wasn't completely under duress by what's not a super dangerous Chargers pass rush. That wasn't really what was going on. He was struggling to find the open guy when his primary targets were being specifically covered and specifically taken away from him.
Well said. And I mean, the thing about the Dolphins is why I like the Dolphins and I want them to have success. And they have a top 3 roster in football outside of the quarterback. The Eagles, the Niners, and the Dolphins, I feel like, are the best teams in football right now in terms of their overall depth, their roster, etc. You can make some cases for, I know, the Chiefs, but their defense is not playing very well right now, and I do think that their lack of an alpha receiver is hurting that team. But the accuracy point, you heard Tyreek Hill say, oh, his accuracy is elite. You'll hear that from coaches. And you don't necessarily see it on the field to the degree that I think it's pumped up to be. Like, it's easy to be accurate, and he does make quick decisions. That is one of his best traits, in my opinion. And when the guy is open, he's able to deliver it to them because of those quick decisions. So I don't necessarily think accuracy is the right word. I think he is a quick decision maker, and he has a quick trigger. But you know what an accurate quarterback looks like? It's Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert might be the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, and I know that the metrics may not say that. But the thing about what Justin Herbert has to do is he has to overcome Joe Lombardi's horrible scheme.
And with much less pass catching talent to begin with, even when you account for Mike Williams and Keenan Allen being healthy,
who I think are overrated receivers.
A full strength Chargers wide receiver room is still not nearly as talented as the Dolphins pass catching group.
Yeah,
At
Keenan
full
Allen's
strength.
consistent. Mike Williams has a big body. Don't think that he gets much separation. But Lombardi, people forget, he was horrible with Matthew Stafford in
Yep,
Detroit, and he's
yeah.
horrible now. And I think that they're very similar players. Herbert, I think, has more upside than Stafford ever did. But Stafford was underrated his whole career because the team was horrible. And in that year when I think Lombardi got fired midseason, it was the same deal. Fit it into the tightest window possible. He doesn't even understand how to get guys open. That should be your number one job as an offensive coordinator.
Imagine if Joe Lombardi's last name was uh
Like
Anderson.
Smith. Yeah, I mean, he would not have a job. It's just Herbert's constantly under pressure. They can't protect him with all the injuries on the offensive line and the deficiencies that were in existence before the injuries happened on that offensive line. He throws the balls into the tightest windows possible, and he's carrying that team.
And he's also
That's the accurate quarterback, not the guy who what was it? He was 10 for 28 for 145 yards and a touchdown. And the only reason he had that touchdown was because he just threw it up, said a prayer to Tyreek Hill, one of the 3 best receivers in football, and the defender fell down, and Tyreek Hill ran it in for a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, 10 for 28, 145 yards, 40% of that those yards coming on that 60-yarder to Tyreek. So, yeah.
I understand he might be off. Justin Herbert was playing with cracked ribs or something like that. We didn't even fully know the extent of his injury for a majority of the year up to this point. Still way more accurate than that.
On the Athletic show that you were mentioning earlier on their recap, they mentioned that at the same time, like
I haven't heard it yet. So
there is a lot of talk about how the stats, the metrics don't comport or add up as much for Herbert, besides like the highlight throws and the ones that make you go wow and that type of stuff. But it's either this season or from 2015 to now. I just can't remember what the timetable was. It was one that he's like 11th in EPA per dropback. Like, it's not as if even with his supporting cast, whether it's healthy or whether it's just not the ideal personnel for a guy like him, he's still one of the more accurate and more efficient quarterbacks. He's only right outside the top 10 of that with the personnel that he has and with the personnel that he has had specifically this season, where guys like DeAndre Carter are taking the lion's shares of snaps in place of guys like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, or where he's making something out of nothing with some of these, basically checking down to Austin Eckler or Gerald Everett. Like, it's with a guy who has this type of arm strength, this type of processing ability, and this type of ingenuity with how he throws, he's being severely hamstrung by what's put in front of him.
The Lombardi offense, I saw some tweet. It was making me laugh. Maybe I can find it. It was, I think I can find it here. It was like it was that meme of, hold on, it's right here. This is bad broadcasting, but I was laughing about it. Hold on. It's that meme of Drake like doing that mock instruction with the Apple guy, like,
yeah.
And this is Joe Lombardi when I show him routes that can go forward. I mean, that's what this guy is all about. And I just think it's very fair to ask what this Dolphins team would have been like if Justin Herbert were the quarterback. I think Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, even if the results are not showing up because of the personnel issues on the Chargers, their athletic conditioning and training staff that consistently is responsible, frankly, for all the injuries on this team. It's always something with them, and that has to do with their athletic conditioning and a coaching staff that seems actively determined to get the least amount possible out of him, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. But I do think that Brandon Staley bears a lot of the blame for that because he's the head coach. Herbert would have been able to stretch the field. He would have been able to make tight window throws. The pressure on Mike McDaniel's scheme would not be so immense. And this is the time of year, and this is the point in my opinion. This is the time of year when defenses have accumulated a lot of film. They've accumulated a lot of film, and the weather's getting colder. Those two things are not good news for Tua because he is very scheme dependent. Mike McDaniel has made an offense that works perfectly for him. But now people are going to get some more film on that offense, and it comes down to players and tight window throws. Mr. Accurate Tua is not capable of that in the same way that a guy like Justin Herbert is, or in the same way, in my opinion, that the top half of the league is in quarterback play. I don't think he is in the top half of the league. And so it's going to get colder. There's going to be more film on him. And this is not good news for the Dolphins, a team that I have a lot of love for. Mike McDaniel, I genuinely, like, my heart swells with joy when I see him. He's the greatest. He's
fun,
the man.
Cute little nerd.
I love him. He's so funny, and I want him to win a Super Bowl. I think it would be great for the game. I don't think you can with this guy.
And the only other thing, anecdotally, which is
with
like,
the court, I should say with Tua,
which is like not as important as like what we're talking about in terms of like quarterback play and stuff, but like apparently the Dolphins had heaters on the sideline in this game at SoFi Stadium when it was 54.
The indoor stadium
when it was 54 degrees
in Los
and
Angeles.
the stadium is indoor in Los Angeles. So I'm just a little concerned that they are feeling the chill of a 54-day indoors in Los Angeles and might have to venture into Orchard Park, New York, and play in a game that could be, I don't know, 16 degrees with 3 inches of snow on the ground. So I'm just curious if that will be a factor, if that'll be something we'll actually see in the playoffs. But that remains to be seen, depending on what route they take, depending on how the seeding shakes out. But I think truly this is overall this is like the pressure point hit the hardest for this Dolphins team, where this is one of those things where it's almost like a proof of concept of how to capably defend a team that knows really, really well how to just make guys wide open for their quarterback to kind of just like dot passes all around the field, and by just making sure he doesn't have the windows and that he has to think on his feet more than he usually does.
Can you imagine how much more dominant a team like the Chargers would be if they had the philosophy that you describe and they had a mind behind the offense that would have been able to make things easier on Justin Herbert, and then he could do what he does with every play, but just
where he calls his number and actually just does something that is not that per his physical attributes.
Yes.
And his mental attributes, he can expand and augment from like a Mike McDaniel's play calling
that's exactly what you want. You want to make things as easy on your players until that's going to it will get taken away, and then you rely on their physical ability. Right now, it's the opposite. It's two opposite ends of the spectrum. One in Los Angeles with the Chargers is they're completely reliant on Justin Herbert's physical ability and his passing and his ability as a quarterback to see the field. And on the other side, they are way too reliant on Mike McDaniel's mind and his scheme.
Totally.
And there needs to be, I think, for any team to neither of these teams are winning the Super Bowl because there isn't enough of each on the other side.
They both there's I think a real limitation to both circumstances.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of the two opposite ends of
but the tough thing,
I would rather be the Dolphins in this situation, but then at the same time, it's like, you know who they could have taken at number 5, and they took Tua. They could have taken the guy that throws lasers all over the field.
Yeah,
I've hammered this point home, but I mean, I feel very strongly.
Anyways, calling it later, guys.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And Tua's a nice guy. Like, I hear him being interviewed, and I go, "Oh, I like you." But
no, I think I like him, and honestly, given quarterback play in this league, like I genuinely think he's definitely a better than average quarterback who I think should probably be.
I don't think so.
I think he should probably be a starter.
Yes. I meant better than of the 32 that start. I don't think he's in the top half.
Oh, that's interesting. I think he's probably in the top half for me. But I think I just at the very least think that like if it's not the Dolphins, if the Dolphins potentially think at some point they have higher aspirations and he has a ceiling that won't let them get there, I definitely don't think in any way he should or will be like a backup.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
But also, I guess what I'm curious about, which obviously it remains to be seen and we'll see in the offseason, is I guess I just don't know, even regardless of what happens from this week going forward, I don't really know how the Dolphins could justify not bring him back next year. Or
They can't. They're stuck. The fan base would revolt, and there's no other options. That's
Right,
why you
right.
have to get this right, and they didn't. They didn't get it right.